The big bad games industry. It's really not that big, and it's really not that bad. It's actually massive, and it's ruthless. No, it's a lovely place to work, and I enjoy working and being part of it. But a lot of times people don't understand it because they take it from the wrong angle. So yeah, here's the simple, cold hard truth. The people in the games industry, in the main, are in it because they have a passion for games and love games and want to do it, right? Because most of them can double or triple their salaries by leaving the games industry and going somewhere else. However, the games industry itself and games businesses are in it for money. So you have these two forces clashing. And eventually, they come to a happy medium in most companies, and most companies manage to balance this out. But it has a big effect on innovation or evolution in games, because what it comes down to is the traditional game model. I have to stress this, the traditional game model. I'll touch briefly on the social game model, just because it's interesting. But the traditional game model is that we want to make a game. We need this much money. Chances are we don't have this much money. So we have to go to someone, we have to ask them for capital. And we have to basically say to this person, we need a couple of million. And we promise you that we're going to turn this couple of million into more money. Now, the first thing you've got to realize is return on investment. Okay, return on investment. Those people could take that money and invest it into fairly low risk options and get a fairly decent return on investment, depending on how smart they were and how flexible they were in terms of monetary law. But they can get a nice return on investment with low risk. Now, games traditionally are fairly high risk. So, in order to be an attractive investment, they have to return significantly on the original capital invested in them, all the time while controlling risk. So, you will constantly, throughout a project, have this factor of wanting to know how much you're going to spend and how to control this risk. Now, there's a wonderful product management adage. I would prefer you to tell me that we're going to spend 3 million now and be certain than tell me we're going to spend 1 million now and be uncertain. Because the certainty is what people are looking for. If you tell people we're going to deliver on this date and it's going to cost us this much money, we need to do this, this, and this, and this, and I'm 100% certain, they're a lot more willing to accept that than if you go, we can deliver it sooner and we think it's going to do this, but we're kind of uncertain. And that kind of gives investors, and it gives producers and people who have to manage this thing the shakes, absolute shakes. So a perfect example of this is why coders burn so much, because your average artist, it's fairly, unless the art pipeline is in some way different or altered, or unless something's changed, most art managers can give you fairly reliable time schedules on their artwork. Now, they may need to include a few revisions into that process, but it's fairly reliable. Code, however, at the end of the day, is problem solving. And now this applies to art too. If they have problems to solve, it becomes a problem. Because when you are solving a problem, you don't know how long it's going to take to solve that problem. You have a rough idea, but you don't know. This is why a lot of work-for-hire studios tend to churn out the same kind of game, reskin, because they've solved most of the problems. So if I turn up to a game pitch meeting and I say, we're going to do this cool game, and by the way, you're going to direct all the action with your shoulders, and you're going to be riding a unicorn. Now, all of a sudden, your programmers are going like, what the hell? So we're using computer vision, and we're going to direct the game with our shoulders, and they're like, oh, a million problems there, and uncertainty, and then your marketing team's going, do we know unicorns? Unicorns are they a stable demographic? And how do we connect? How do we sell this? And da, 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 da. So all the way, whenever you make a decision or propose something in a game project, the first thing people are going to do, or at least the first thing the money people are going to do, rightly so, is they're going to poke holes looking for risks in it, because if they can find any risks, they want to get rid of those. Which is why you find games aping each other so much, and it's why you find stable franchises and sequelization. So what does this mean for the kind of research that I'm talking about? Well, let's take a simple scenario, which I will take from a project I actually worked on. Maze generator. Had a game with a maze in it. I thought, maze generation, I did this in university, it's deadly simple, I can generate a single solution maze with blah blah, it's a dead easy algorithm, shove 4 entrances to the maze, sort of problem, this I can do this, no problem. Now, I was a young lead on that project, but a more experienced programmer turned around to me and says, no, not worth our time. Just make up 20 mazes, and we'll flip and rotate them so they look fresh. And I was disgusted. I was like, no, because I love procedural generation. I love the idea of new content constantly and everything. But the fact of the matter is, and I got the procedural maze generator to work. I spent a few late nights, but it worked, and it was of a consistent level, predictable level of difficulty, which was the hard part. Actually, getting it to work was piss easy. The hard part was making it consistently difficult, generate good solutions, which is hard. But anyway, the truth of the matter is, while I'm very proud of that particular maze generation algorithm, his solution was better. Because his solution meant someone would sit down with some grid paper and draw out 20 mazes that were crafted by hand, and therefore well-designed, good pieces of content, and we would recycle these pieces of content. The only people who would suffer in this equation is people who played the game over and over and over and over and over and over, and that's a very small percentage of the player base, and do we really care? And it's sad. It's sad, but the truth is, if you can fake it, make it. Because faking it in that situation would have produced a better experience, but the most important factor there, it would have removed all the risk. There would have been no late nights, because we knew exactly how it would take. There would be no complex maze generator, and it was a better solution. Full stop. And this hit me particularly in my first year in the games industry. I was continually throwing out clever solutions, which were clever and worked, but were risk. And so you've not only got that risk of tweaking it and making it work, and getting in a situation where if a mathematical algorithm is doing something and you want to tweak this one part of it, well, that's actually really hard. That actually sit down and really work that. Whereas if it's a piece of handmade content, that's really easy. So that's one reason why procedurally generated content or dynamic systems are so risky. The other reason is it's a QA nightmare, because you can't test every possible solution. What if one of your mazes spells fuck? Just with the way the corridors are going. That's a perfectly possible. Now this game I made was a kid's game. Well, it was a family game, but it was E-rated, if I recall. And there is a possibility that in one of the generations of the maze corridors could in such a way combine to form letters and spell profanity. Highly unlikely. 1 in a million chance. But if it did happen and Fox News got hold of it, oh my god. So it's a massive QA risk, it's a massive production risk, it puts all sorts of things on there. Anyone who has ever QA'd or worked on a game that had physics in it immediately goes, oh God, yes, been there. Because the moment you have that dynamic system of physics in there, you no longer have control of all the systems. Now again, I find this very, very sad, but it is the reality of the games industry, and we're not a charity. No one is going to go, hey, I want to do this cool thing, and I think the games industry should work this way, and we're going to change the way the games industry works. No, not going to happen. What we can do is, through hobby projects, through academic research, through these lower risk methods, introduce small components and innovate in small ways. And I would argue, contrary to what most people think, that most AAA games actually innovate a lot. And a lot of times the innovations aren't things you see, like and if you go to conventions where programmers are talking and stuff, you really get excited because, the guys working on, say, the newest Battlefield game, they did some really interesting lectures at DICE, for instance, of new stuff they've done with occlusion and just really interesting stuff. And programmers are constantly innovating in there, and designers are constantly finding new ways of putting together interfaces and systems, and artists are always finding new techniques. I loved this one talk that Blitz gave about using Maya as an R&D tool and improving that, and so there's a lot of innovation going on in the field, but it's evolutionary, and it's always under the background of maintaining risk. So it's not that anyone is a grumpy, no one's going, it's purely we have to maintain risk and we have to work with these realities. And so, as always, let's work with the system, let's improve the system that way. A couple of years ago, was pitching for my previous company that went under, where I was working as a designer and programmer. I was pitching a game called Lies. I can say that because the game company's gone under, so NDA is gone and whatnot. But Lies had the first workings of a verbal combat system, which is built on this research that I've been doing over the years. And that got a lot of interest, but I hadn't solved all the risks. And if I had done a bit more research and solved all the risks, I reckon we could have made it. And I reckon I would have pushed forward a lot. So there are opportunities for there. You've just got to know what the questions you're going to be asked are. And the questions that you're going to be asked are variations of how much is this going to cost and how certain are you, and we need that certainty. So anyway, that's the reality of the games industry in terms of innovation and risk, and why procedurally generated content is so rare, because it's a bitch to QA, it's a bitch to develop, and it just increases risk. So if you are a programmer or a designer or some individual in a game studio who has managed to get a piece of procedurally generated content or logic into your game, I salute you for driving forward the cause, and I have pity on your production team. So again, thank you very much, and yeah, cheers.